This is Launching Your Daughter podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here is today's episode. Episode 29. Well, welcome everybody. My guest today is Lynn, who is a licensed clinical professional counselor and courage coach in Frederick, Maryland. She has over 25 years of experience in psychology and the education fields, and now offers coaching to teens and adults who struggle with anxiety. So welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, I'm glad to have you on because what you're providing, what you're offering to folks out in Maryland is just really exciting to me. So I would love if you could tell the audience a little more about what you provide regarding the coaching piece.
So for me, anxiety has been, part of my life, all of my life. And when I decided to specialize in anxiety, one of the things that I wanted to reach out to people was to say, you don't have to have a diagnosable mental illness of anxiety to begin working with it, to figure out how to approach it and move forward. So that's where I like the blend of the coaching rather than just the counseling and people feeling like they have to wait until they have generalized anxiety disorder or panic disorder. That there's a lot of different ways that anxiety shows up in our lives, and I'm here to help people figure that out and how to move forward with it.
And yeah, you're spot on that you don't need to wait till it gets to that more of a kind of a crisis mode or diagnosable piece of it to be able to work with it. And coaching is different than the counseling because it's much more about in the present moment and really working with and using skills versus kind of going backward and looking at the mental health piece of it or the past maybe symptoms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have a unique approach to your coaching practice. And could you talk a little bit about the name of your practice and why you named it the way you did?
Oh, goodness. So Auntie Anxiety, what I like to say is she was born during a coaching session, probably I think the first coaching session that I had with my coach. We were looking at, who's my ideal client? Who do I like to work with? And I'm like, well, I know anxiety. I live anxiety. I really like working with anxious clients. I have this joke of, that what I love about working with anxious clients is they think a lot. The biggest drawback to working with anxious clients is that they think a lot. So it's, there's a paradox there that I really enjoy. And so when I said to her, well, but, everybody, every counselor out there, every coach, everybody puts on their website, I work with anxiety and depression and whatever. And she just had this moment of pause and she said, yeah, but everybody has it. We all have to deal with our anxiety. And so it was sort of in that moment, the creative juices just started to flow. And for me, I see myself as like somebody's, I'd hope really cool aunt, that person that you can talk to. They're not your parent. They're not, a teacher or an authority figure that way, but they're sort of that person that has a little bit more experience, but at the same time, because they're to sort of guide and just be supportive in you figuring out your process. So that's kind of how it came along. And I love to play with words. If you've looked on my website, there's alliteration all over the place. So it started and it stuck and I've been moving forward with it.
Well, and I love it because I think it is very fitting, especially for the teenage population. And that, a lot of times when I work with the parents and the teenagers, I will make sure there's other support systems from adults that are outside, sometimes the parents, because as you know, sometimes the teens struggle with just saying things to their parents. So to have another trusting adult that is able to support them is really important. So I love, how she came about and what it is that you offer for them. So that's great.
Yeah. And it's the humor piece of it too. By creating this character, I also feel like I can, in some ways, from the get-go say, we're going to laugh about this. It's going to be fun and it's going to, be funny. There's a lot of hard work in it, but it's a character. It's something it's also how I help people to bring their anxiety outside of them, as I do the work. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, could you tell us a little more about how you use the coaching that really can help parents and teenagers either have a better relationship between those two pieces, the parent and the teen, and or even maybe the teenager having a better relationship with the anxiety so it doesn't stop them and keep them stuck where they are in their life? How does the coaching work with that?
So for me, the coaching is in part educational. So that's where I start, is explaining, the difference between fear and anxiety and how all of those works and how important they are. So like for some teens, teens and adults too, I explain it's like for some of us, our amygdala works like a smoke detector. And so, the smoke detector has a job. It's important. It's how we know if there's smoke, if there's fire. It's how we can be preventative about some things. But for some of us, our smoke detector works like as if it's going to go off just if there's steam coming out of your hot shower. And so we start backing up and really understanding how the system works, why it works. And probably the biggest thing for me in the coaching piece is to help people to recognize that they're not going to get rid of it. It's not the goal. The goal isn't to get rid of your anxiety. That just feeds it. Avoidance and resistance and all that just feeds the anxiety. But rather to get at that place of, we're going to turn your anxiety from an enemy into an ally. We're going to get it to work for you rather than against you.
Oh,
And
I
so
love that.
again, a lot of it is just really about educating and understanding and communicating, and then starting the process of being willing to take little actions that make a change in how this, so there's an acceptance piece and an embracing piece. The what's the term everybody's using now? Leaning into, so working on that education piece and then the rapport building so that there's that trust of, it's time to take this forward and I'm willing to be uncomfortable in doing all of that.
Oh, I love that, because that's the term I really use with my clients, is really leaning into it. But I love, though, it's not about, our fear is not our enemy, because it's there for a reason.
Absolutely.
So I love as we explore it a little more and take actions into it, because I know fear does not like, taking action. It just wants to keep us stuck. But how we truly can turn that into an ally. That's a beautiful approach where it's everybody working together to understand it more versus, it creating a division.
Right.
Love it. So how do you then help the parents kind of have a better understanding? Because again, as we know, for teen girls especially, their anxiety levels continue to increase in that tween and teenage years as part of just the brain development. How do you help coach the parents in helping their daughters manage that better so they don't get stuck or so overwhelmed with things?
Right. So one piece of it is helping the parents to deal with their own anxiety, because I've never met an anxious kid that didn't have an anxious parent. So that's a big piece of it, is to work with them on recognizing and accepting that in themselves. And then again, that piece of working together rather than working at odds with each other. And I have to say the biggest, the most important piece of all of this is everybody understanding that this idea that society has sold us about happiness being the ultimate goal, and that we can all be certain and we can all be comfortable and everything can be made easy if we just, whatever, buy their product or, whatever is going on, that really the most important skill for everyone to learn is how to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Have to learn how to be okay being uncomfortable. We don't have to like it, but we have to learn how to deal with it. And so, I find a lot of times parents, of course we don't want our kids to be uncomfortable on purpose, but when we can start to embrace that it's an important part of the process and not just keep fixing everything for them and not keep just allowing them to avoid things that they're not comfortable with. So that's a big piece of my work with the parents.
That is beautiful, because when the parents begin to trust that their child is going to be okay in the uncomfortable, that's the life skill they have that totally can take them into adulthood, that when other stressors come up in their life or obstacles come up, which they do, which is to be expected,
Yes.
their daughters will understand, okay, this is a moment in time. This is not a forever. I know I can ask for help if I need it, but no matter what, I'm going to be okay as I move through and begin to
Yes.
take action in this. So, oh, I love that.
Yeah, because I find so often, just life is so fast paced, and these very well meaning, I'm going to say mostly mothers, because, that's the role that these mothers who have just, done things to sort of speed up the process, move things along. But the challenge has been that their daughters, their kids in general, they don't have any confidence that they can handle a situation.
Right.
They don't have any confidence that they're going to be able to figure this out and that they're going to be able to do these things. And so they've gotten themselves very stuck in this place and these behavior patterns. And that's what we work on. We work on how to get out of that and how to start, doing, if it's whether it's laundry or fixing a meal or some of these things that mom's just been taking care of because she feels like that's her job. It's like, hey, your kids need to learn how to do these things too. Let's build some confidence and competence here.
Right. And I think you've hit too that, again, I see that very similar where moms are very well intentioned and they're trying to do everything because they want to provide for their girls. And at the same time, they also can then stress themselves out because
Exactly.
they're trying to run whether it's one kid or multiple kids all over the place and try to do all these tasks. It's like, no, it's teaching them the life skills so
Right.
that when their daughters move out, because eventually they will, hence launching their daughter, that, they're able to do it and that the moms can kind of go, they get it. They have the confidence and I've instilled that and helped with that and guided that, but also not stress myself out at the same time. And role model to their daughters, self-care is really important.
Right. I in one of my parent groups, I did a mom's group, and what I suggested was that they all need to take a really hard look and give themselves a promotion, and that they needed to go from being the maid and chauffeur to being the supervisor.
Yes.
And that everybody in the family, especially their kids, let them be part of the family. And part of the family, being part of a family is that we all have jobs, we all have things to do, and that is how then they go on to be able to do those things in their own family, in their own lives.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I'm curious, what are some of the questions that sometimes you may receive from the parents before, whether they even do their own coaching or that they want their teens to come in to do some coaching? What are some of the concerns that you hear that sometimes actually stops people from doing that work, to doing the coaching part of it?
Yeah, just not being willing to be uncomfortable. That's kind of the big thing, because sometimes I'll get folks. It doesn't happen too often, but every once in a while you get the folks who are they're so entrenched in it, and maybe some part of them wants this to be easy, and so they just they want their kid to be able to come and be here for that session, and that they're not going to have to actually do anything different themselves, that they're not going to have to make a change, and so then you start to see the enabling piece of it. My child's sick. And I think, well, wait a minute, but you just said that they did this, this, and this, but they can't get here for that hour that they're sick. So sometimes that's a piece that gets in the way of getting the work done. And so it's just a matter of whether you have the opportunity to have either a session with them to basically say, hey, I get that this is hard, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here to be supportive, but I can't just be supportive, and I can't just do it for you. That's all part of it. We all have to be willing to be uncomfortable in this.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to educating the parents. If these are their concerns, that it's like part of this, how this whole process works means you are probably going to get uncomfortable as well. You're also going to be challenged to maybe do some behaviors a little differently, maybe even think a little bit differently, which will then help empower your teen as well with how they think about things differently.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. So tell me then, as they go through the coaching program, again, whether it's parents and or the teens, what are some of the benefits to it? You've already listed quite a few because, again, it goes back and, it's helping them get more comfortable in the uncomfortable. But what are some of the other benefits they get from coaching?
Probably one of the biggest is with anxiety. I tell people that anxiety is kind of like a really annoying, socially awkward friend. it will tell you that, hey, pay attention to me and me
Uh-huh.
only,
Uh-huh.
And what happens when we do that is we make our world really small. I've got teens who basically are sitting and, they'll tell me like, hey, I'm going to live in my parents' basement and play video games the rest of my life. Like, I'm cool with that.
Uh-huh.
They're making their world really small. And so one of the benefits of this when they're invested and doing the work is that their world gets larger.
Yeah.
They expand their world and they allow for a lot more opportunity than what they do when they just want to hang out with anxiety and listen to its silly games.
Mm-hmm. And that's also like it's a counterintuitive piece of it too, because
Absolutely.
the more we actually engage and make our world bigger, the more confident we feel.
Yes.
And we start to learn that, oh, we're not alone in this either. So you also have compassion for others, but also compassion for yourself. And it automatically begins to reduce the anxiety, which is
Exactly.
it's fascinating. But yeah, it's that
Yeah.
counterintuitive. It's like we got to get out there more so we feel less overwhelmed and worried.
Right. Because then, the courage part is just show up every day.
Yeah.
That just takes courage, right? That is courage right there. But what that leads to is if you show up every day and you do the work, then, you're going to gain confidence. That's going to give you self-confidence. And then ultimately what you just said, being able to accept that, sometimes, some days, things go the way you want them to, and some days they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that in all of that, let's just look for the opportunity and move forward with that and compassion. You hit that one right on the head right there, that they learn how to be compassionate with themselves and compassionate with others.
Yeah. We could go on and on. At least I know I could, because this is what I work with too. A lot is the anxiety and the teens and all of that. But I'm curious, are there certain books or pieces of advice that you give the parents and or the teens about kind of how to work through it and or in between maybe the coaching sessions?
Yeah. So one of the best books out there that I'm aware of is called Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. It's by Reed Wilson and Lynn Lyons. And they're the folks that inspired me. As a matter of fact, Reed did a presentation, a course here in Frederick, I don't remember how many years ago. And that was sort of in the background when I made that decision about specializing in anxiety. I love the way he approaches things. And what I love about their book is that it's not just talking theory. It's actually giving you, step by step, like here are the issues. Here's what's probably going on. Here's what you need to look at for yourself. Here's what you need to look at for your kids. And here are some really practical ways that you can put this into action. So
Awesome.
that's one of my favorite resources. And I think the only other advice is what we've already talked about, which is that how important it is to embrace or lean into, however you want to say that, your anxiety and get it to work for you rather than against you. We're stuck with it. It's not, you're not going to get rid of it. And I tell people, think about how you would feel if you were your anxiety and someone was trying to snuff you out,
Yes.
like you're not going to be very happy. So no wonder it misbehaves. So how do we turn that around? How do we go from feeling like it's the enemy to turning it around and being an ally? Yeah, the story I remember about how that is done best was so supposedly, again, I read this in a book. I don't know how accurate this whole is, but I love the idea of it, which is this is what Mahatma Gandhi was so good at. These, British officers would be sent to get him to say, hey, and of course they're perceived as the enemy and he's perceived as the enemy to them. And he was always so civilized. He'd be like, oh, we're not going to talk about that yet. Let's just sit down and have some tea, make friends. And they would leave having a better understanding of what it was all about, rather than this black and white of, we're right and you're wrong.
Yeah.
And so when we can do that with our anxiety, and we can say, hey, let's stop being enemies here. Let's let's understand what your purpose is and how we're going to work together.
And it goes back to the thing too, where instead of reacting from the anxiety, we respond to it and respond to situations. And so again, the anxiety doesn't control us. We're in a sense controlling it, but understanding where it's coming from and what it is that, it's trying to tell us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all part of my educational process, is understanding the difference between reaction and response and how that all fits in with fear and anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, could you let everybody know how could they get a hold of you or how can they find out more about you, Lynn, and what would be the best way to do that?
My website would be the best place to do that. So it's www.auntieanxiety.com. And Auntie is spelled Auntie.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lynn, for being on today and shedding some light regarding the coaching versus the counseling piece of it and how coaching can really be beneficial for parents and teens regarding trying to manage it now versus it turning into something more of a diagnosis and being able to feel more empowered as they grow up and helping the parents also feel less anxiety as their kids grow up.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
If your daughter is struggling with anxiety and getting stuck in feeling overwhelmed, not knowing what to do, I encourage you to reach out to your local counselors or coaches that are in your area. If you live in the state of Indiana, remember I do online counseling. I also encourage you to go out to launchingyourdaughter.com and sign up for my newsletter. I have some things that I'm working on regarding teen girls and some possible groups, so sign up to find out more information. Thank you for listening to Launching Your Daughter with Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. For more information or to stay up to date, go to launchingyourdaughter.com. You can sign up for my email list or join my Facebook group. Thank you.